Well, thank you, John, and welcome to the Heritage Foundation. Peace has ever been mankind's desire. And yet, throughout history, war has been his common practice. Well, consider the major conflicts of just the 20th century in which America has fought: World War I, World War II, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Iraqi War I and II, the Afghan War, and of course the Cold War. In the wake of each war came the question, how can we make, and more importantly, how can we keep peace with other nations? Or are we doomed, as in George Orwell's apocalyptic novel 1984, to a state of perpetual war? One way is peace through strength, a basic principle of the Reagan administration, and a principal reason why the Cold War ended at the bargaining table and not on the battlefield. Another path to peace is to rely on statecraft, grounded in the principles of liberty and equality articulated in the Declaration of Independence. Now, sometimes the Americans' early statesmen approved limited military and political intervention overseas. They took their lead from the Roman adage, if you want peace, prepare for war. But how far have we strayed from these principles? Have we become the policemen of the world? In our laudable desire to extend freedom, have we adopted a policy of nation building, regardless of the wishes of the nation we seek to rebuild? In his newest book, To Make and Keep Peace, Angelo Codevilla says that our 20th century and 21st century leaders have confused peace and war, as well as America's interests and the world's wishes. They have forgotten, if they ever knew, the lessons of the past and neglected the wisdom of the founders. Dr. Codevilla offers no easy answers, insisting that peace requires that we make friendship with each other at home and avoid the near occasions of war abroad. Our guest is superbly qualified to explore the many dimensions of peace. Professor Emeritus of International Relations at Boston University, a former research fellow at the Hoover Institution, a senior staff member of the U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, ex-Foreign Service officer and naval officer, the author of 14 books and numerous articles in leading publications here and abroad, and possessor of one of the sharpest minds in the realm of public policy. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm heritage welcome to the author of To Make and Keep Peace, Dr. Angelo Codevilla.
Thank you, Lee. I hope keep you awake in the next few minutes. I was moved to write this book by a commercial that I heard on Fox News for the Wounded Warrior Project, an eminently worthy cause. The commercial, the solicitation, was accompanied by a plaintive song that asked us to say a prayer for peace. That got me a bit angry, quite a bit angry. Suppose, I said to myself, that you had been paying plumbers to fix your house's pipes, and the pipes still leaked, and someone said to you, say a prayer for your pipes. You would say to yourself, well, God has nothing to do with my pipes. I didn't hire God to fix my pipes. I hired those plumbers, and the pipes are still leaking. They didn't do the job. There was something wrong with the plumbers. What's wrong with the plumbers? We hired statesmen to superintend our business of peace and war for the purpose of providing us with peace. And instead, they've given us war without end, war which they have no intention of ending, war which they seem happy enough to continue superintending. Why? What's wrong with that? Why don't we have peace? Well, that of course, is the reason that they do not have the intention of creating peace. Why don't they? Well, because if you go to any of the U.S. government's academic venues, you see that they preach what one might call the Cliff's Notes version of Clausewitz, namely that, according to them, that war and peace are not really distinguishable, that international affairs is a seamless continuum between ordinary business and mutual destruction. That, of course, is not what the dictionaries say. Dictionaries are quite clear about what war is and what peace is. Not so the U.S. government, not so statesmen, not so, in fact, much of the academic literature today. Hence, it is not surprising that our national discourse on the subject of war and peace is a sterile confrontation between neoconservatives who see as President George Bush articulated in his 2005 second inaugural, is a process by which we try to secure the world's freedom, believing that we will not enjoy freedom ourselves unless every other nation is free, meaning, of course, that we will never be free, and a libertarian illusion that we can somehow avoid the rest of the world. The common sense of the ages is quite against that. Most recently, a Wall Street Journal, New York Times poll showed that a strong majority of the American people believe that the U.S. government should be less active in the world, but at the same time, the same poll showed that a majority of the American people wanted the U.S. government to be much more assertive against America's enemies in the world. Now, mainstream media read that as a kind of contradiction in the American mind. Well, of course, it is no such thing. In fact, the opinions of the American people reflect the wisdom of the ages, namely that one ought to seek peace, seek to stay out of trouble, but that one ought to earn that peace by being terribly assertive, terribly so, against our enemies. We have failed to do that, and my book is an attempt to rekindle our attention to the basic fact that the basic objective, the natural objective of statecraft is the provision of peace. We do not deal, statesmen ought not to be dealing with foreign nations in order to deal with foreign nations. For international relations is not an end in itself, just as plowing fields is not an end in itself, but rather an end to the crops that one wishes to produce. The purpose of international relations is so that we may lead here at home the life that we wish to lead. The purpose of securing peace abroad is to secure peace among ourselves at home. And it just so happens that failure to secure peace, to earn peace among foreign nations, really does tend to bring about the loss of peace among ourselves. One of history's more poignant teachings from the Peloponnesian War is that Sparta and Athens destroyed their own domestic peace by failing to fight one another with the purpose of somehow bringing that fight to an end. Nature tells us that the purpose of movement is to come to some sort of rest. The purpose of the natural purpose of any activity is a product of that activity. And so the natural purpose of international affairs and of the most active part of international affairs, which of course is war, is the securing rest and peace. Now, my book begins with a clarification